covering health programs available to you through Satilla Health Services.
Hello, Waycross. I'm Holly Sweat, the Director of Nursing at Satilla Regional Medical Center. Thank you for tuning in to Satilla Talk.
Tracy West. I am a X-ray technologist at Satilla Regional in the Nuclear Medicine Department. Thank you for tuning in to Satilla Talk.
My name is Barbara Brown. I work in nutrition services at Satilla Regional Medical Center, and thank you for watching Satilla Talk.
Your host is Dina Eves.
Good evening and welcome to Satilla Talks. I'm Dina Eves, the marketing manager here at Satilla Regional, and with me today I have Dr. William Dial. He'll be here with us talking about joint replacement surgery. Dr. Dial is a physician here on our medical staff. I'm sure all of you are familiar with him, and he specializes in orthopedic surgery. Stay tuned and find out the common reasons why people have hip and knees replaced, and if you stay tuned long enough, you might see some actual footage of a surgery.
Satilla Health Services Health Fact. According to a study by an exercise physiologist at the University of North Carolina, gardening consumes about 4 times as much energy as just sitting quietly. That's similar to brisk walking, low-impact aerobics, or playing softball. Taking it one step further, digging or tilling the soil is more strenuous by about 1/2 and requires the same energy as playing a fast game of racquetball. This has been a Satilla Health Fact from Satilla Health Services. We really do care.
We're back here on Satilla Talks with Dr. William Dial, an orthopedic surgeon here at Satilla Regional. Good evening, Dr. Dial.
Good evening.
Thank you for being here. We're going to be talking about joint replacement surgery, whether it's a knee, a hip, possibly an elbow. I'm not sure. I've never heard of elbow. Shoulder.
Elbow or shoulder.
We're going to talk about it all, and at the second half of the show, we're actually going to show some footage that Dr. Dial has brought for us of an actual surgery, and he's going to talk through it. But first of all, Dr. Dial, tell me, how long have you been here in Waycross, and are you a native of Waycross?
I grew up in Homerville, and I've been here in Waycross for almost 19 years.
Oh, okay. So this is home for you now.
Correct.
Now, did Dr. Terry grow up in Homerville also?
Yes.
Were y'all friends growing up?
Yes.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't know that. How did you choose orthopedics? Was there someone that influenced you, or a certain accident that happened to you, maybe?
Orthopedics is a specialty that deals with fractured bones and muscles, nerves, the things that allow our bodies to move. And as you go through medical school, you're exposed to all the different specialties, and orthopedics just was always very, very interesting to me. So when it became time to decide about a specialty, there was no question.
Right. Okay. Where did you go to medical school?
I went to the Medical College of Georgia.
Okay. We're going to kind of jump from subject to subject, but I know I see you at lunch almost every day here at the hospital, and you have several people with you. One who is a physician assistant. Is that right?
That's correct.
Tell me what the role is of that PA. And the reason I'm asking you is last week on our show, we talked about the role of a PA in our emergency room. So I want you to tell me what he does there with you.
Physician's assistant is who works with me is Rick Tatum. He is an RN. And then beyond his RN degree, went back and got a physician's assistant degree. And he's certified as a physician's assistant. His job is as a physician assistant, a physician extender. And in my office, he helps see patients. He sees the patients, some of the patients, gathers the information from them, and then I go into the room with him. We help evaluate the patient together. In the operating room, he assists me in surgery. And when we're doing orthopedic surgery, particularly our total joints, there's a lot of need for a very knowledgeable person to help expose the area you're working on and to allow you to move, you as the surgeon, to move quickly through the case. So he is a person who, through the years working with me, knows exactly what I need to see at what moment. So he goes ahead and gets things exposed so I can see them.
Right.
And helps me through the course of the procedure. The other person who works with me is Danette Harvey, and she's an RN. And she also scrubs with me in the operating room. Again, the more knowledgeable people I can have around me helping me, the quicker I can move through the procedural situations.
Right. Okay. And that was one of my questions later. Who else is in the operating room when you're performing a surgery? Are there scrub techs?
In addition to those two people, there's a scrub tech, and there is an RN who's called a circulating nurse. The scrub tech is a very vital part of the team. That person handles all the instruments, and maybe in one of our shots we can later we can show you the vast amount of instrumentation required to do these procedures. But that person again is a person who scrubs on all of the total procedures, knows what needs to be done when. The array, there are about 7 or 8 trays that have to be opened for these, and 4 or 5 tables that are just covered with instrumentation. Right. So his job is to know what and when to have parts ready and instruments ready. And the circulating nurse then is an RN, and she is not scrubbed, but she is the pivotal person in the room. Anytime anything is needed in the room, she's the one who does it. If you know, there are a lot of things that you need that are her domain. She takes care of suction. She takes care of any medications that we need at the moment. She takes care of something called a cautery unit, which allows us to stop bleeding, an electrical system that allows us to stop bleeding when we need to in the operating room. Anything that has to be added to the operating table, she's responsible for that.
So she's kind of the gopher, for lack of a better word, in situation. She goes for whatever's needed if something's forgotten or
That's correct.
something. Okay.
And her task is very, very important, because we're talking about an operating room full of equipment, and this person not only has to know about the equipment from the orthopedic standpoint, but from all the other specialty standpoints as well.
Oh, wow. So there are, I guess, 5 people in there.
There are a minimum of 5 people. Well, we left out a very, very important person, and that's the anesthesiologist.
Okay. Talk about that for a second.
That's the person who controls the patient's pain level, controls their state of awareness. Total joint replacements are done either with either done with general anesthesia, where the patient's put totally to sleep, or with spinal anesthesia or epidural anesthesia. These allow the patient to be awake and yet not have any pain or discomfort with the procedure.
Okay. How many, do you do surgery every day or just a few days a week?
I operate 4 days a week routinely, and then orthopedics is a specialty of accidents and trauma and fractured bones and dislocated.
You're called in a lot.
So we are available to operate anytime.
If you had a day of only doing hip replacement surgeries, how many could you do in a day, or how long does it take for one procedure?
What I do for my total procedures is to do them usually on a morning, and I usually will do 2 procedures, 2 total hip or total knee procedures each morning that I schedule those.
Do you have one today after the show?
No, do not.
Okay.
Usually try to do my totals on either Monday or Tuesday early in the week.
So you have the week to follow the patient.
To get things squared away as far as their post-operative care.
Right. Okay. Let's go back to your office. Tell me what a typical day is like for you. Just maybe name over 10 or 12 different kinds of patients that would present themselves to you.
The vast majority of our patients, again, are patients who are injured or who have developed problems with their musculoskeletal system, their bones, muscles, tendons, nerves. And that ranges from the patient who has a totally worn out joint these people have tremendous difficulty walking. And years ago, 15, 20 years ago, the vast majority of people with a worn out joint, an arthritic joint, would have to become progressively inactive. They would more and more become the person who is either wheelchair bound or chair bound and walk with crutches or a walker all the time. And when a joint wears out, the friction level in the joint increases greatly, so it takes a lot more energy to walk with joints that are without their smooth lubricating surfaces. They now have bone to bone rubbing together. So it ranges from that person who otherwise is going to be a very, very inactive and painful person to people who have carpal tunnel syndrome, which is a problem that pressure is placed on the wrist right in this area, deep inside. It's not something the patient wills to happen. It's something that can occur to all of us. And then they get numbness in these three fingers and part of this one long ways. And when they try to use their hands, they have a fumbly, awkward feel. They wake up in the middle of the night over and over with their hand asleep and painful. They're trying to drive with their hand on top of the steering wheel. Just that much bend in the wrist is enough to bring on the symptoms. So that interferes with the patient's day-to-day activities. We see lots of patients with torn cartilages in the knee and ligament problems about the knee and ankle.
Sports injuries.
Sports injuries. And we see a lot of people with shoulder problems. Something called rotator cuff syndrome is probably a very, very frequent thing I see in my office. Most of those people we can handle non-operatively. About 10% of them end up having to have some arthroscopic surgery to relieve the pain and irritation in the shoulder area.
So what would you say on a typical day is the most common complaint?
It would be very difficult. Every day in my office is different because it depends on the patients during that particular day. But as an orthopedic surgeon, we're treating problems from the upper extremities, arms, collarbone areas down to the toes. Neck problems are an area that orthopedic surgeons deal with as well. The problems in the head are dealt with a neurosurgeon as far as the brain and the skull. And the facial areas are dealt with by ear, nose, and throat specialists.
Right. Okay. I want you to make an actual diagnosis. I'm going to present a little problem to you. Okay? And we didn't discuss this before the show, so I'm putting you on the spot. But recently, I've had a little spot right here in my elbow that tingles when I put any weight, like when I go to grab something to pull down, when I put my elbow on a table, and I could almost find a spot with my other hand, and it'll just make me jump. It just shoots a tingling through my arm. But after a day or two, it was gone. But I thought, oh gosh, I've got tennis elbow, or I'm starting to get some bursitis or something. What would you think that was?
That sounds more like a nerve problem rather than the tennis elbow. Now, does that hurt right in there?
No.
No pain?
No.
I tap on that, no pain?
No.
Straighten your elbow. Good. Bend your elbow. And it bothered you most when you put your elbow down?
Yes.
You get the shocky feel?
Or when I grab something and put some weight on my arm, and it was really
touching
right,
that area.
It was right up in there.
That area is a groove, has a nerve called the ulna, U-L-N-A, nerve that goes through that groove. And that is an area of compression that we can get. Most people get this by unknowingly resting their elbow on the table or on the arm of a chair, or when they're driving on the armrest, and that nerve becomes irritated. And when you touch or pull on or twist that area, then you get a shocking or burning sensation that runs out into these two fingers along that border of the hand and arm. And you have the spot that you said you could touch very well that's called a Tenell's sign. That's a very localized area of irritation in the nerve. So you palpate palpate or touch that nerve, and it doesn't bother you at all until you touch that particular spot, and then it's like electricity out into the hand.
Exactly.
So that's called ulnar nerve compression, and it's a lot like carpal tunnel syndrome, except it's at the elbow, and it's a different nerve.
But now it's no problem, so it just kind of comes and goes?
Comes and goes, yeah. People who get it really irritated, it's not a temporary thing. It continues to build. So
mine could come back.
If you have to have it, you want it to be temporary and go away.
Yeah, good. All right, you send me a bill on that, okay? All right, we're going to take a short break and come back with Dr. William Dial as he talks us through an actual joint replacement surgery.
Actually developed joint, artificial joint, and it's been the body and the heart and the hip and knee.
Right. I just thought of something while you were talking. Have you seen great progress just in the last year or two with these kinds of surgeries? I mean, is it getting better and better and better?
I've been in orthopedics since 1971 when I began my specialty training. And at that point, the total joints were not very good. They were still very experimental. And that's not to say that joints weren't done then that patients have that work very, very well still, but that was very much at an experimental level at that time. Through those years, there has been tremendous progress in the biomechanical properties of the parts, the longevity of the parts once they're placed into patients, and the wear characters of them. So there's been excellent progress through the years.
Okay. Tell me exactly, I know you brought some prosthesis here with you, but tell me a joint replacement surgery. Do you go in and clean out what's in there and totally replace it with prosthesis? Is that as simple
Lots
as
of
it is?
people think that we go in and take away a lot of the bone. So you take a section of the knee out totally, or you take a section of the hip
That's what
out
I'm
totally.
envisioning it to be. But
What actually happens, people who have total joint replacements have good bone right to the joint surface, coming up to the knee, coming down to the knee. That bone is good bone. The part that's worn out is the actual contact surface. So what a total knee or a total hip is replacement of the contact surfaces themselves. So we keep just as much of the patient's bone as we possibly can, replacing thin layers of bone with artificial surfaces.
what reasons are joints replaced?
The most frequent reason is osteoarthritis or degenerative joint disease. That's a problem where our joints progressively wear out. Most people who have to have total joint replacements have them because of the joints wearing down secondary to our age, unfortunately. There are lots of people who have them secondary to trauma, where a joint has been destroyed by an injury and subsequently have to have a total joint. The next most frequent category is rheumatoid arthritis, where these are systemic diseases where a person has the joint destroyed by the rheumatoid arthritic type change.
I know just the word joint replacement surgery is intimidating. You were talking earlier that it only takes about an hour to do, and I know the recovery time is rough in the beginning, but later it's just amazing that people say, this has changed my life. They literally were hardly able to walk without a cane or a walker, or walk at all without chronic pain. And my grandmother, for one, I mean, she is about to go to another country, and she just had her knee replaced about 6 months ago, and it's just...
What total joints do for a patient is to give them a new leash on life, because they see their world closing in on them because they can't be active without tremendous increases in their pain and their energy drained. When they have a total joint, then they progressively, initially it's rough like you said, but they progressively gain motion, strength, pain relief. About 5% of the people with a total joint will continue to have deep, dull, achy, throbby pain, but nothing compared to the pain and inactivity activity level that they had before. 95% don't have pain at all. And obviously that's our goal.
That's great. Okay, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. I want you to describe to me either a hip or a knee, whatever you want to talk about. You've brought parts for both, so have at it.
Let's talk about the total knee joint replacement.
Okay.
When a joint is worn out and we have to do a replacement, this is a femoral prosthesis. This fits on the end of the thigh bone, and again we take a thin layer of bone off as we've discussed. If you can see this on the camera, there are very precise angles to this prosthesis, and there are 5 different angles that have to be cut, and they have to be cut very precisely. We use templates to allow us to make this cut, and then we replace the exact amount of bone that we've taken away with this. And this part is either cemented into place with a material called methylmethacrylate. Methylmethacrylate is a powder and a liquid that we mix at the operating table, and within 10 minutes that's rock hard, bonding the bone and the prosthesis together. In some people we're able to do ingrowth prosthesis, and this mesh work inside this prosthesis allows our bone to actually grow down into that mesh and directly lock this part in place. And that depends on the strength of the patient's bone as to which way you go, whether you use the methylmethacrylate or the ingrowth.
Oh, this is the front, the knee, right?
That's correct.
Is that positioned right? So this would be at your thigh.
That's right.
Okay. All right.
Now, the other part, the part that comes up from the ankle to the knee, that part's replaced by this type of prosthesis. This is the actual contact surface. So these parts fit together this way inside the patient's knee, allowing that patient to bend and straighten their knee. The inset on this prosthesis is a highly machined polypropylene. It's a plastic material, but not like any plastics we see in our day-to-day life. The undersurface of this is a metal support tray, a stem that goes down inside the bone, and screws that help hold this in place while the patient's bone is growing into these pores. If we have to cement the part in, if the patient's bone is soft and has to be cemented in place, then we don't use the screws. The part is hooked directly to the bone. And then the third part of the total knee fits underneath the kneecap, and the back side of the kneecap, again, a very, very thin layer of bone is removed, and this part is fitted into that bone, and this portion of the prosthesis contacts the thigh part, and as the knee bends and straightens, this part moves up and down in a grooved area on the prosthesis itself. So this very nearly simulates our knee function as far as the contact surfaces, and these are the parts that would create a total knee. When we do total knee joint replacements, total knees are not like the knee the Lord gave us to start off with. They are artificial. They don't bend as far as our normal knee would bend, but they give patients a very, very high degree of pain relief. The activity level of the patient's much improved, and about 95% of the patients have no pain at all.
That's wonderful. And during our break, Dr. Dow, you were talking about your daddy was a carpenter, and you grew up working with him. And all jokes aside, that helped you with what word did you use, the physics or the something to help you in doing this. But now you say that this is more like the cabinet making. This is the detail work, trying to make all the parts fit.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Now, see, you've got a hip replacement.
Correct.
Did you refer to it as a prosthesis?
Yeah, the parts, these different parts of the total hip or total knee, each part is called a prosthesis. The total thing is the total knee prosthesis, is the total hip prosthesis.
Okay.
Now, this part is for the thigh bone and the total in the hip area. We have, everybody knows we have a marrow area within our bones. That marrow area is where where blood is produced. But when you're having a total, the ball is removed. The ball of the hip is removed because, again, it's worn out. The inside of the thigh bone is machined, and again, we drill that out, we ream it, and then we shape it just right to fit with broaches to accept this prosthesis. These prostheses come in about 12 different sizes, and then this part is press fit inside the thigh bone itself. The ball we can have different links on so we can make up for a patient's shortness in their leg that's occurred through the years with their arthritis. And on the socket side of the hip, again, that portion is reamed out, is prepared to accept this part. This part is either press fit or fixed into place with methyl methacrylate. And then this, again, is polypropylene, the very highly machined plastic material that gives total hips and total knees much greater wear properties. So this part is fixed into the socket area, this is fixed into the stem of the bone, and then these two parts are reduced in to give the patient a stable hip situation to allow them again to have an easily movable, bending and straightening, angling hip without pain and discomfort. And again, 95% of the people have no pain or discomfort. 5% will have a deep, dull, achy, throbby pain within the hip area.
Let's talk about the recovery process. How long is it before a patient can walk, run, be back to their normal routine after one of these surgeries?
When we do a total procedure, we, in the recovery room, those people are put into a machine called a CPM, which gently bends and straightens their hip and knee. We start off right away with just a very small amount of bend, and then we progressively increase that amount of bend through the course of their hospitalization. We have the following morning, we have them up in a chair, and that following day we have them up on a walker, moving about. Physical therapy is very important when we're doing total joint replacements, and the surgeon's hard part in these procedures is at the operating table. But after that, the patient becomes very important, because the patient has to, and we have our patients understand ahead of time, that they have to work very hard physical therapy-wise, and if they'll do that, regain their motion, regain their strength, then they have very functional joints. We ask these people to use a walker for about 3 to 6 weeks, depending on their progress. We begin progressing weight to these very quickly, and as the patient is able to put weight on the leg, then we progressively bring that weight bearing up to full.
Okay.
We then change them to a cane, and then the vast majority of people will be on the cane for a very short period of time and then walking independently. So when we do total joint replacements, we very much like for people to quickly get moving, because the capsule or lining of the joints have been taken away. If we work on that motion right away, as that heals, then it heals with good motion, and we can progressively get that patient active.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Dial.
You're welcome.
It's been interesting. If you would like to view a copy of today's show with Dr. William Dial, please go to the Waycross Ware County Public Library. They have all of the copies of Satilla Talks there on file, and you can check them out. I hope you'll tune in next Thursday at 7 o'clock. We'll have Ray Dwayne on our show here. She'll be talking about Hospice Satilla and how it serves our community and the surrounding counties. In the meantime, remember, if you need any type of health care, just think Satilla.